You can? Okay, great.
Yep.
Good morning, guys. I hope you're doing well. So my presentation is on yurts.
Anna, we
The
can't hear you,
tradition.
honey.
You can't hear me?
I can see you. Oh, wait a minute.
I can hear her.
You know what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I can hear.
I had my speakers off. I
No worries.
had my speakers off so it wouldn't create a bunch of flack when I. Golly. Sorry.
No worries.
Do over.
Um, yeah. So my project is on the traditional yurt or ger. I'm not 1,000% sure how to pronounce that, but I think it's close to that. So the yurt was developed by the nomadic tribes of the Mongolian people. They needed a form of housing that they could transport with them as they traveled. So they developed or created the ger. And they actually have a lot of interesting customs and spiritual values when it comes to traveling. For instance, they always cleaned their campground out of respect for the land, and they never left holes in the land, which is why part of why the yurt is designed the way it is. Another important part of the ger is that the door was originally made of felt, but over time they developed it to be made out of wood. And you'll see that all of the wood framing in the ger is painted orange for safety, and the door itself actually symbolizes sustainability, which is interesting. So if we're talking about how the ger was made, it's a little bit different than how the yurt is made today, the Western adaptation of it. So they started with 2 poles, and then they attached the compression ring. They usually tied it to the compression ring, and they had a lot of customs about how the compression ring was handled, how it was stored, who could touch it or not. And so once they had that up, they would put up the lattice walls, and they usually had 3 to 5 depending on the size of the yurt. So like a new family would maybe have 3 walls, a larger family would maybe have 5. And then they would use sometimes like hide or braided horsehair to tie the lattice walls together and to give it a little bit more support. And then you can actually see the framing a bit better this way. You can see that the rafters are attached to the lattice walls from the compression ring. And one difference is that they are actually tied to the cross in the lattice, whereas the Western design, it's sort of just laid on top of a very strong cord, and the lattice walls are attached to the door frame. That helps keep them sturdier. And then it's covered in felt and a white cotton cloth. The cotton cloth is more so for like water resistance and weather resistance, but that kind of insulation is actually incredibly helpful. It works really well. That's part of why the design is so good, because I mean, when we all think of Mongolia, we think that it probably gets really, really cold there. This is an artistic depiction of the inside of the ger. You can see obviously that the wood stove or fire is right in the center so that the smoke can be released and no one suffocates. You can see that the furniture is sort of long, but not very wide to utilize space. They also had customs about where people sat in the yurt as well. Like the head of the household would always sit towards the back of the ger. And also it was considered very rude to have conversations at the doorway. You were supposed to either have conversations inside or outside, but it was bad luck to have conversations in the doorway. I'm not sure why, but I do know that that is a custom they had. So now if we're talking about the Western adoption of the yurt, this happened in the 1960s by William, and then I definitely can't pronounce his last name. But this was largely the reason it got so popular was because environmentalism was really becoming popular in America at the time. And publications like the Whole Earth Catalog were becoming popular, and a lot of people had access to that. And the Whole Earth Catalog would include at times like building plans, essays, and graphics. And how a lot of people got access to information and how to build a yurt. So you would see communes where people wanted to live sustainably and they would build their own yurts because they had access to the information about it. And in 1978, actually, the first yurt company in America opened. Pacific Yurts is what it was called. I think they're still open today. They've been a very, very successful business. And the present day yurts are still popular because they're economical, sustainable, and transportable, which are all really important things when it comes to a lot of different people's lifestyles. So now we're going to talk about how the Western adaptation of the yurt is presently built. I included this picture because I thought this was like a really interesting design. Also a really pretty one. I like their walkway. So the first step in building a Western yurt is the foundation. It's a pretty simple foundation design. It's one that you could probably do yourself. Might be a little tedious though. You place footings in a circular shape, and then you can either level the footings, or you can level the beams. And I made sure to include like 3 different ways. You can see in each of the pictures that they did this in a different way, attaching the beams to the footers. But yeah, the basic idea of it is the same. You want to fasten the beams to the footers, and you want the footers to be in a circular shape to accommodate the yurt. Then you would move on to your platform and your flooring. From those beams, you would most likely add, if you're smart, insulation. That's going to help with pests. That's going to help with keeping your yurt cool or warm. And then some people stick OSB over the insulation. Some people just go ahead and put their tongue and groove flooring over that. But either way, the flooring you put on the platform is going to be your final flooring that you use for your home. One thing I forgot to mention, and you can see it well on the next slide, but when you're doing your platform, you want to make sure that you have sort of like a final band around the platform so that your lattice can push up against it when you're forming your walls, so that your lattice doesn't just go off of the platform. Yeah, so once your platform and flooring is done, you're going to put up your lattice walls. I have seen videos where they just do one massive wall. It's very difficult to move, carry, set up because it's just so heavy. So I think that you should probably have at least a minimum of 2 and attach them to the front and back entrances. But yeah, you will be attaching your lattice walls to your door frames, which will be nailed into your flooring, because that is going to be your most stable source of just framing, really, because the lattice is strong, but I definitely wouldn't nail anything into it. And then after you have that, you're going to put a tension cord in between the top crosses of the lattice walls. This is an incredibly strong tension cord. It's usually made of steel. I've heard some people say that they use the same ones that they use for airplane hangars. And it makes sense because you are supporting your entire roof on that one cord, which you can see here. You see that they have the same design of having a compression ring and rafters that you attach that, but then they lay the rafters on top of that tension cord, which is why it's so important for it to be strong. And then here you can also see in the furthest right picture, that band right here that keeps the lattice at the bottom sort of in place. When it comes to insulation and covering, you're going to have a polyester insulation line over the rafters, your roof rafters. That's the first thing you're going to lay down. Then you're going to add a reflective insulation, which is going to be really great in the summer because it is going to get hot. Then you seal the top part of the roof with fiberglass reinforced aluminum tape. That's going to help with any potential water damage you might have. Then you put vinyl laminate on the roof and on the walls. And when you put out the walls around, or when you put the vinyl laminate around the walls, you're going to be tying it into the grommets that are at the top part that is laid onto the roof. And then some people choose to tie cords around everything else once it's put on, just for an extra layer of stability. It's kind of optional though. So you're probably also wondering about water, electricity, plumbing. Here on the right, you can see a really beautiful example of someone who has taken a yurt and then upgraded it to be, a permanent living situation. They've added windows, extra framing, drywall, and it looks beautiful. It looks very, very comfortable. When it comes to framing in the yurt, just like you would with your door framing, you're gonna frame mainly into the floor at first. That's going to provide stability, and then you can build whatever you like from there. A lot of people do lofts to utilize extra space. People have done some really beautiful designs with that. When it comes to plumbing, a lot of people do utilize a shared plumbing vent wall between the bathroom and the kitchen so that they can get the most bang for their buck when it comes to plumbing. People also consider a composting toilet because that way you can save on a black water system. It's also important to make sure that wherever your water lines are, that you keep it insulated and you have a consistent heat source, especially in the winter. You don't want that to freeze. When it comes to electrical, I have seen yurts where they just did open framing and you can, the wiring is covered, but you can still see that it's done. You can mount outlets and switches to snow legs, hard openings, or directly to the floor. I personally would have a hard time just having that out in the open. I would worry about it getting messed up, and also doesn't look great. So I would probably opt for like some drywall by that point if we're doing the framing already. And this is a picture of a yurt that a couple did in Portland. It's very modern. You can see that it has plumbing, electrical. The design is very different. But you can see that they use a plumbing wall because the sink and their kitchen is on one side, and then inside of that square, that's where their bathroom is. Here's another picture of one. This is pretty minimal. I mean, you basically just have a fridge, oven, bathroom. I think they have a shared sink. I spot like a little heating system. They have a fan, but it looks nice. I mean, I'm sure they make a ton of money off of it for Airbnb, and I definitely wouldn't mind staying there. So the budget for yurts is high is like 44,000, average is 27,000, and low is about 11,000. But if you think about it as a fully functioning home build, it's not crazy expensive. I mean, it's pretty economical. It also depends on how you build, how much control over it you have. I mean, if I were doing it, I would buy the yurt kit used, build my own frame, and then outsource maybe like the plumbing and electrical. And you could definitely save some money that way. If you're looking at resale value, here's actually an example that I found in Asheville. This woman is selling a 12-foot wide yurt for $2,500. She originally bought it for $5,000. It's 5 years old, so that's not a great depreciation rate. I mean, it's degraded. The price is degraded pretty rapidly. But if you are the one purchasing a yurt, I think this would be a great way to go. I mean, you're paying about half of what she paid, and the materials are still fine. Also, if anyone wants a yurt in Nashville, there's one for sale. So I would say the pros of it is, I think it is a great starter home. Like if you were a person, couple, or family that has bought some land and cannot afford to do a stick-built home, a yurt would be a great option because it is comfortable, it is spacious, it is transportable if you want to move it to a rental space after you're done with it. Yeah, so I think it has a lot of great qualities, and it is, the basis of what made it so popular in the first place. It's, easy to assemble, disassemble, transport, and it's not that expensive. Cons, with all alternative housing, it might not be the right option for everyone. If you're looking at heating and cooling, it's not going to be the same as a stick-built home with the same kind of foundation. Depending on where you are, just like every alternative housing, permitting could be an absolute nightmare. It could be fine. Really just depends on where you are. I personally would worry about pests. I would worry about insulation issues, because I mean, the more connected you are with nature and where you are living, the more connected you are with flies, mice, etc. And, you know, if you're living off grid, that's also going to pose its own problems, just with any sort of structure that's off grid. Why would I build this? I would build this because it's affordable, comfortable, fairly easily assembled compared to some other things, and it provides extra space or passive income if you wanted to use it as a rental to make some more money, or Airbnb, or even a guest house for when people come visit you. And there are my sources. There is a really cool documentary that I watched about the Mongolian berg, I think, Yurt, and it's really interesting. So if anyone wants the link to that, feel free to ask me, because it's very cool.
Very nice. Thank you. Questions?
I was surprised by the larger ones you showed there that I didn't realize they got so fancy.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really beautiful ones. I saw one in Washington that they spent 35 grand on, and it was huge, and they actually did an addition to it as well. So they had like a 2,000 square foot home that they spent like 35 grand on.
That's still cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I was thinking about when you were talking affordability. When my folks built this house that I live in 1966, they paid a whole whopping $27,000 for it. And of course, I've added on to it, and it is now estimated by the Burke County tax collector as $280,000. So, you know, for you guys that are young trying to get into a house nowadays, things are quite different. Matter of fact, my first home, which was only 900 square feet, when we sold it, it was sold for $24,000. But you know, it's probably worth 70 to 100 now, and it's, you know, a tiny, tiny house. On the comical side, does anybody else think that looks like a Pokeball in the middle of that thing?
I can't see it. Are you able to zoom? Oh,
Yes,
I see
definitely.
I see it now. It's a person's head, but man,
oh,
she was showing it. I thought, why is there a Pokeball right in the middle of this
Awesome
thing?
at first.
Glad I wasn't the only one. Glad I wasn't the only one. So, you know, at some point, when do we go from Yurt to Dell Tech? And for those of you that are not familiar with Dell Tech,
I was thinking the very same thing.
When you start prefabbing panels in an octagon.
yeah. So this is a Dell Tech home, and we have a Dell Tech home in our neighborhood, you know, but does that not look very much similar to, you know, it's got a compression ring. Of course, we don't have a wire around the outside of it, but it's pretty cool. So one of my colleagues at Western Piedmont Community College, when I was there, this was his house and he lived in Spruce Pine, which is in the high country of North Carolina. It's pretty daggum cold. The living room was a yurt. This was the kid's bedroom. This was him and his wife's bedroom. And so they had several different portions of the house that were, you know, you had to go outside. So one thing to be thinking about when you're talking about a yurt is definitely a change in your lifestyle. So he is now a senior professor at App State University with the sustainable technology program there. And this is his new house. And I know we kind of talked about greenhouse. So on the south side of his house, and I actually designed this house, and the outside of his house has a greenhouse on it. And so this helps keep his house warm in the wintertime. And but he does have moisture issues as well. I also did a quick search for Airbnb, and look at there, Asheville, North Carolina, and you can rent this Airbnb, which looks really nice in Asheville. Biggest thing is that big old wood stove right there. I think I'm finding out with this bus as well that wood stove is a good thing to have because it eliminates a lot of moisture. And so, you know, when you're talking about a yurt, you're talking about fabric stuff in here. And so you're going to have to deal with some moisture condensation in the wintertime, especially if you got some breathing humans in here that's going to breathe off moisture. It's not always, well, basically with any house, you're going to have to be dealing with moisture. So my concern is the insulation. So when I was asking Chip about his, you see that big old wood stove in there. Again, it's just a different lifestyle. You're gonna, you might be accustomed to wearing a turtleneck sweater all day long and all night when you're working, and so it's, big old socks and mucklucks inside the house to keep you warm. So it's definitely not for everybody, for sure. Oh, I know one other thing. This is Yellowstone National Park. If you've ever been to Yellowstone, Yellowstone pretty much shuts down in the wintertime because they get so much snow. And in the wintertime, they'll pop these yurts up for the staff to live in. So there's not, you go to Bozeman, and the next closest big town, I guess, would be Idaho Falls. There's not a great deal of larger cities around there. So housing has been problematic. These two actually sit right beside of Old Faithful. And there may be a commune living. There may be probably a dozen people living in here, but I thought it was pretty cool when I was visiting that they set these things up in the spring, use them all summer long, no air conditioning. Generally it doesn't get too terribly hot there, and when it does, it's a dry heat, and then they take them down in the fall, approaching winter. It's about time to take it down at this point. So the government uses them quite extensively in some of the park systems, and also Glacier National Park. I've seen a couple in Glacier National Park as well.
What's that to the left of the yurt? The left yurt, is that part of the fence or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's a solar panel for something, or I don't rightly know right offhand, but it looks to be a little solar cell for maybe a ventilator or something inside. Last minute questions.
To me, it kind of looks like something that you could convert one of those park pavilions or whatever. You know what I'm talking about? Do you know if it's possible to do that? Like enclose one of those and make it something like that?
Like a picnic shelter?
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about? Like the octagonal.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Some parks have
gazebo.
Shape the same.
Gazebo, yeah.
Can't think of the word.
That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That might be a little too small, way too small, but.
Well, you can get them in bigger sizes, I promise you.
Sure, a much bigger one, you could probably.
Well, that one that she was talking about in Asheville that was for sale, 12 foot. What do you do with a 12-foot yurt?
Swing cats?
What?
Swing some cats?
Swing some cats. I'm in the wrong one here. Wait a minute. Yurt. No, yurt. There. But, you know, if you did something like Chip did, and, you know, this could be the kid's bedroom, and then you could buy another one, and that could be your, you know, the master bedroom, and so forth, and then connect them all by tunnels and stuff. I've seen that as well. You know, it's a yurt seems to be like a glorified tent. And some people still set these things up and live in them on a dirt floor. So just, I don't know that they do it too much around here because of the amount of rain that we have, but Southwest, I can see this happening for sure. I noticed that some of these models have this clear dome. Is that kind of standard with a prepackaged deal, Anna?
Yeah, a lot of them come with it. I mean, I think people like them because it's basically almost like a skylight. If I were to have a wood stove right in the center of it, obviously that wouldn't be the best choice. It just depends. I mean, some people put a wood stove in the center, some people put a wood stove on the side. Some people don't have a wood stove, but it is part of the kits that I've seen because it's basically like a skylight.
Well, I guess my dog is I'm gonna put her out. Come on, let's go get her. Go get her. Go get her. Go find that dog. Go find that dog. Love it. Love it. She's still going crazy in there. So, you know, again, insulation, man. Insulation seems like it would be a kind of a hard thing there. What kind of R values are we talking about? Do you know?
I'd have to do some more research to get the actual R values of it, but my friend did something similar to your friend. She sort of had like bedrooms, and then they had a yurt as their kitchen, and it was in the dead middle of the summer in the rain. It was super hot and raining, and I was in there, and like it was definitely the most comfortable space on that land. So I'm not sure the exact R value, but I do know it's at least enough to be comfortable. It's not going to be the same as a house, but yeah.
Right. Let's see what this company says about insulation.
Using wool, the wool outperforms any synthetic materials we have. So yeah, if you look at the traditional wool insulation, you got a lot of yaks that you can.
So yeah, wool insulation seems to be a very big topic in the bus thing too. And so my question is, one person got on there and they're telling about how great wool is and this, that, and other thing. And then they say, well, it resists insects. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute. Why do I have my uniform for Last of the Mohicans is made out of wool? Why do I have to put mothballs in there to keep the moths from eating it if it's bug resistant? Am I missing something?
It might have more to do with the fact that the wool is anhydrous. Yeah, it's not going to hold water, and the water's what attracts the pests.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, but I just wonder if we get do we need to put mothballs in the walls with this stuff?
How much moisture are you anticipating in your closet?
None, hopefully. But that's, that seems to be a topic anyway. Notice that they are using reflective material, and that was something that Anna brought up as well, that, where was it? I seen it, reflective insulation. All right, so that is a huge thing. And, when you think about reflective insulation, it doesn't, reflective. What is reflective? Your tinfoil hat that you wear, when you watch the news or, listen to political debates and stuff, that stuff is that's all you need. Reflective insulation is basically something that's going to take care of radiation. So to bounce that radiation back off when you're putting in all of this other stuff, fiberglass and stuff like that, you're trying to deal with conduction, or not conduction, convection. And then when you put the seal down or use the seal around the tops of your double top plates, then you're eliminating conduction. But think about it. How many houses actually have a reflective material somewhere on the roof somewhere, unless they've got a white or a what is it called, metal that goes on the roof, galvalume or aluminum, that's not going to be reflective. Matter of fact, a friend of mine, he's building a house right now and he's using metal, but it's black. And I'm like, ugh. So, is that reflective? I doubt it. But that's something that we just never have addressed before, is the reflective insulation. And we've not dealt with radiation in our houses. This cord, you said that it's like super strong, and I can imagine it would have to be to be able to hold this structure together. It looks like it would be pretty massive. These newer type like this, like you were talking about those kits, even this, how easy would it be to take these down and put them back up? Did you come up with anything, Anna?
I mean, from what I've seen, the longest part about making yurts is the platform, because most of the people who are setting up yurts don't have a ton of building experience. So they have trouble with the foundation and the platform and getting that together. It seems like putting up the basics of the yurt, if you just have like a couple and their friend comes to help, takes about a week to 2 weeks, depending on how quickly they are working, how much help they have. So I would imagine disassembling it, depending on how many utilities you have installed in there, would also take about a week to 2 weeks, depending on what you're thinking of, and one of the major things that makes this take longer is that, unlike the gear, there aren't two poles in the center to hold up that ring. You have to get up on a ladder and attach it, and that's hard.
Yeah. Well, I noticed that, with these two poles, they're not using that wire. So the support for the roof is basically on these two poles. So the gear seems to be more like a glorified tent, where, this modern day is, it's not something that we could just take down and go to the next campsite with, obviously.
Yeah, it would take a minute. It would at least probably take like 2 weeks to a couple months.
Yeah. Definitely very interesting, for sure. Absolutely. Other questions? Comments?
Just one little comment. You mentioned the Whole Earth catalog, and if any of you have a chance to take a look at it, it's a sweet little piece of history from a pre-internet age.
It really is super cool.
If any of you have a chance to check out the Whole Earth catalog, that's how people found out about stuff before there was an internet to go search around on things. And the items in that catalog are pretty incredible, even for how dated some of it is.
Yeah, it's really cool. I know that the last Whole Earth catalog also included like blueprint for a sustainable urban house that basically was like a mini homestead. It turned out to not work long term, but there was just so many cool ideas and essays and building plans in it. Like it really is super cool.
Yeah, you've got the last Whole Earth catalog there, and that was from the late 70s, but they did put out a Millennium Earth Whole Earth catalog recently, about 15
Oh
years.
wow, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's still going. I've got 3 of them.
Is this kind of like Foxfire books?
Actually, no, it's instead of being more explanations of, traditional crafts and things like Foxfire is, it's more like a Sears catalog for environmentalism.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Oh, I didn't know there was a free online copy. That's cool.
And that bottom right-hand corner right there is one of the best books ever written by Gurney Norman. It's called Divine Right's Trip, and they published it on the bottom corner of every page so that you'd flip through the whole catalog to read the book.
Where are you seeing this now?
That bottom right corner there, that enclosed corner,
Yes.
that's a novel written by an author named Gurney Norman, and they put it in the book so you'd read the novel and flip through every page of the catalog.
Huh, that's pretty
It's a
interesting.
fantastic book. I highly recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah, I see it. I had a book growing up called what the heck it was. Something I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was basically something similar to this. And it was written like in the 1800s for how to build a shelter or how to build. It was basically a survival book for boys is what it was called. And it was very cool. And I used to go out in the woods and do all this kind of stuff. But this is pretty daggum cool here. I like it. I've never seen this.
You'd love it, Eric.
I would. I already am. Yeah, for sure. And you say there's a millennial version?
The new Millennium or something like that. The Millennium Whole Earth catalog. Don't put in the last, put in the Millennium Whole Earth catalog.
Oh.
That'll be the new one.
What did you say?
The Millennium Whole Earth catalog, I think.
Now you want me to spell
Yeah.
that.
Millenium. There you go. So that's the most recent one.
Okay. Cool. I'll leave this up, and that's pretty cool. So yeah, if anybody wants this, go to the Internet Archive, and you can flip through this book, and it looks very cool. This reminds me of some of my old woodworking books. I've got a huge collection of 17th and 18th century woodworking books, and this is pretty much, they had you can't exactly zoom too well, huh? Oh yeah, if I'd have used the zoom that was on the thing there, I could. May take a little bit. Anyway, so yeah, take a look at that. That's pretty cool for sure. Yeah, yeah. So they're all basically hand-drawn drawings it's in some of these books, and it's really, really cool. And a lot of this
work there is really incredible. I highly recommend all of that too.
What is it?
Eric Sloan, the author who did the Museum of Early American Tools. He also did Barnes, and
yeah,
all of his books are great. His illustrations are awesome.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's really sad to think that this is really a dying art for sure. If you guys ever get a chance, if you're on TikTok, look up Old Salem, and they do quite a few nice little snippets that talk about how living and not just woodworking, but cooking and cleaning and washing clothes and all that stuff that is, it's a dying art. So it's really cool to watch that stuff. Definitely stay in touch with your history.
I will say there's also one more cool book. It's from the 50s and it's called How to Build a House for $350. I recommend you check it out. It's pretty cool.
I can get my fingers to work.
I'm not sure if that's the exact title, but if you can't find it, I'll find it and send it to you.
How to build a house under 400K maybe? Or was it $300?
No, it was like $350. It was cheap.
And you say it's a book?
Yeah. If you can't find it, I'll do a deep dive on the internet and send it to you.
Okay, yeah, do that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Very nice.